Okay, welcome back everybody to the Dream Whisper of Jesus. Today I thought I'd do something a little bit different, and I'd talk about the South African Navy and the South African submarine force, because 2 weeks ago there was a really interesting video on YouTube on BizNews discussing the future of the South African Navy and South African submarines. So I thought I'd just do a really brief commentary now. I've already made one video, but I deleted it, but I was just rambling on too much. There's two ways to do this discussion. Either have a proper discussion which lasts probably half an hour, or there's the 2-minute, 3-minute speed version. So I'm going to do the 2-minute, 3-minute speed version as best I can. But basically, to understand why South Africa has a submarine capability today goes back to the first Cold War, where South Africa didn't fit in the West, it didn't fit in the Soviet bloc, it didn't fit in the non-aligned group of nations. It was basically in this small group of other nations, South Africa, Israel, and there's a few other I could potentially list as well. But basically this apartheid South African government came to the conclusion that the Soviet Union might use African proxies to conduct a war or a naval war against South Africa, and as a result South Africa needed submarines. So that's the origins of the South African naval submarine capability. But even before 1994, when the end of the Cold War happened in 1991, basically all the strategic rationale for a South African submarine capability evaporated, that the Soviet Union had ceased to exist and there basically wasn't a great power in the world that was going to develop proxies to try and attack South Africa. So ever since really 1991, South Africa's continued to operate submarines, but there's not, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, there's basically no geostrategic reason to operate them. Basically, for example, if a nation decided to try to invade or to conduct a naval operation against South Africa today, basically the American Navy would come to sort it out and fix the problem somehow. So, for example, in the world today, I'll make a important qualification, but this is world nuclear powered attack submarines. There's a few other nations that have them as well, but in March 2024 the USA is the dominant world leader with 51, Russia has 13 and China has 9. So those are the three big countries as far as having attack submarines that can go anywhere in the world. So there's basically no chance that there's going to be a country trying to do some kind of naval attack against South Africa while the USA remains so dominant. The complicating one for anyone in Asia is China. So that's a different conversation, but basically China today has developed a naval surface fleet, not a submarine. Submarines are a bit complicated, but China has the largest naval surface fleet in the world. So that's sort of making everyone in Asia jittery that China has a larger naval surface fleet than America. But that for projecting power, say, to South Africa, China it's extremely risky and risky endeavour, and the US Navy would just chew up any kind of Chinese naval fleet if it made the bizarre decision to invade South Africa, for example. I'm just making up situations there because it's just not going to happen. But in Asia and Taiwan, South China Sea, things like that, it's a much more complicated discussion about the relative strength and weakness of the US and Chinese naval forces. But yeah, it's just returning back to South Africa. It's such a difficult situation, the South African submarines, but for myself, I just can't see the geostrategic rationale for that. So something that a future South African government could do is retire the South African submarines and try to sell them. They're about 20 years old, so they've still got some financial value in them, and then you could sell those submarines, and then those funds, rather than squirrel them away into anything, the South African government could reinvest those funds back into the South African Navy. And just before I made this video, looking at South Africa has the 23rd largest EEZ, exclusive economic zone in the world. So that's quite big. So you really do want to invest in your surface naval fleet. That could be really valuable. But yeah, I really think the sunset is coming for the South African Navy submarines. It just depends whether a South African government really wants to bite the bullet and do that. It's a really painful decision, but I think that's the best decision. Okay, thank you brothers and sisters in Christ for listening. I hope that was interesting. God bless you. Bye bye.